Hello class and welcome to section 2.3, which is about standard form. By the end of today's lesson, you will be able to write and graph equations in standard form. This is our final form of linear equation that we're going to talk about. This is called standard form. When we're looking at this, we've got ax plus by is equal to c. So this one is a little bit different from the other two in and of the fact that x and y are on the same side of the equation as opposed to different sides of the equation. Once again, those values that are in red is what's going to get replaced by numerical values. So for example, this equation could say 7x plus 5y is equal to 70, and that would be an example of a standard form of the equation. There are a few rules that need to be followed when it comes to A, B, and C. The first rule is that A, B, and C must be integers. If you recall from chapter 1, an integer is a positive or negative whole number or the number 0. So again, those are the numbers that show up on the number line. So A, B, and C have to be numbers that show up on the number line. The second rule is that A and B can't both equal 0, which means that either x or y must exist in the equation. So we're not allowed to have 0x plus 0y is equal to 7, for example. That doesn't work. At least one of the values, A or B, has to be a number other than 0. And the last rule is that A is going to be a positive value. So you always want to make sure this x is a positive number. The number in front of x is positive. B and C can end up being negative numbers, but the number in front of x should always be a positive value. So we're going to start again with graphing and how we graph these equations. When we graph in standard form, our key is to find the x and y intercept. Quick refresher, we talked about the y-intercept in the slope-intercept form, but that was 0, y. So the x is equal to 0 and y is equal to a number. And our x-intercept was x, 0. So that's going to be where it hits the x-axis where our y value equals 0. So in order to graph in standard form, the first thing you're going to want to do is try and find your intercepts. The way you can do this is, say for the first one, we're going to look for our x-intercept. So we're going to solve for x minus 2 times 0, because when we have our x-intercept, y is equal to 0, and that's going to equal 9. You can plug it in this way, or you can know that when you multiply 0 times any number, it's going to go away. So you can just set 3x equal to 9. When we solve then for x, we end up with x equals 3. So my point is at 3, 0. So the first point on this graph is going to be my x-intercept at 3, 0. Then we can solve for the y-intercept. That happens when x is equal to 0. So we would plug in 0 for x. Again, we know when we plug in 0 for a number, that means when we multiply, it goes away. Notice this negative in front of the 2 stayed as part of the problem. When we divide both sides by negative 2, we end up with y is equal to negative 4.5. So the point I'm going to graph now is 0 for x and negative 4.5 for y. So we go down 4.5. That's my y-intercept. And then once again, we want to make sure we are connecting our points with a straight line, and it is going to end up looking roughly like this once I straighten it out just a little bit, trying to make it go actually through those points. And again, we want it to go through the entirety of our graph, and we want to make sure that we have arrows on the end to symbolize that it goes on forever. So we found the x-intercept, found the y-intercept, connected those points for our line. Go ahead and try this one on your own. When you solve for x, you end up with 2.5. So that's that first green point. When we solve for y, we end up with an answer of 2. That's that blue point. Connect them with our straight line. Another thing that we can do is write equations in standard form. When we are writing equations in standard form, the first thing you need to do is look at your two values for your x-intercept and your y-intercept. In this case, we have 2 and -6. So what you're going to do in order to find c is multiply your x value with your y value. So in this case, I'm going to have c is equal to 2 times -6, which gives me an answer of c is equal to -12. Now, in order to find our a and b value, we're going to have to use our given information. So here, we're going to say a times 0 plus b times 2 is equal to -12. I took my x and my y and I plugged it into the equation. A times 0 is going to give me 0, so that gets eliminated, and I can now solve for my b value. When I solve for this, I find that b is equal to -6. I can do the same thing to solve for my a value. I'm going to take a times x, which is -6, and I'm going to add on b times 0, because y is 0, and that's going to give me -12. Once again, multiplying by 0 makes that information go away. So I've got a times -6 is equal to -12. When I divide both of those by -6, I find that my a value is equal to +2. This gives me a final equation in standard form, written as 2x minus 6y is equal to -12. So we can use our ordered pairs to solve for each of the values. Go ahead and try this one on your own. We multiply, we get 5 times 9 is 45. Setting up, we're going to find that 5 times a. When we plug in 0 for b, that goes away, so I get a equals 9. When I plug in 0 for a, that leaves me with 9b, giving me a b value of 5, for a final equation of 9x plus 5y is equal to 45. One special thing that we're going to look at in terms of standard form equations is what happens when each of our values equals 0. So, when a is equal to 0, we've got that a is equal to 0, so we've got 0 times x plus b times y is equal to c. Once again, multiplying by 0 makes it go away, so I've got by is equal to c. I can get y by itself by dividing, and c divided by b is going to give me a number is equal to y. Now, on the graph, on the coordinate plane, what is this going to look like? So if I draw a quick coordinate plane, let's say, for example, that I decided that this number ended up being 3. So we're looking for all of the places on the graph where y is equal to 3. So for example, the point 0, 3, or the point 7, 3, or the point -2, 3. All of these points have a y value of 3. So when your a value is missing, when that part goes away, you're going to end up with a horizontal line because we want all the places where y is equal to a singular value. On the flip side of that, when we plug in and we have 0 in our b spot, we have ax is equal to c because we've eliminated b by multiplying it by 0. Eliminated y by multiplying it by 0. Again, you would solve to get x by itself, and you would end up with x is equal to some number, so I'm just going to pick 4 in this case. If I come over and look at the coordinate plane again, I'm now looking for all of the places where x is equal to 4. So for example, 4, 0, or 4, 2, which is over 4 and up 2, or 4, -6, which is over 4 and down 6. So when you're left with just your x, you're going to end up with a vertical line. Go ahead and try graphing these two on your own. When we solve this first one, we need to divide by 4 on both sides, so I get x is equal to 3. So that straight vertical line at x is equal to 3. On the y, I'm dividing by 3, and I get y is equal to negative 6. So I get a straight horizontal line at negative 6. We can also write in standard form when we have these vertical or horizontal lines. So if we look here, both of my x values are equal to negative 3. So I simply write that x is equal to negative 3. That's the only information that they give us. So that's the only information I can use to write the equation. Go ahead and try writing this one on your own. In this case, it's the y values that match. So we've got y is equal to negative 8 as our equation. The last thing we're going to do is talk about a couple of word problems involving standard form. So Tamira is making trail mix. She has $40 to spend on a mixture of almonds, which cost $8 per pound, and cashews, which cost $10 per pound. What are 3 possible combinations that she could buy? So our first job is to write our equation in standard form. The total, this $40, is going to be our C value, which leaves 8 and 10 to be A and B. It does not matter which order you put them in, but I, as a general rule, like to put my first value as A and my second value as B. So when I write out this equation, I'm going to have 8x plus 10y because she's mixing these things together, and that's going to cost a total of $40. Now, to answer the question, we want 3 possible combinations that she can buy. In order to do that, the first combination you should solve for is your x-intercept. So plugging in 8x plus 10 times 0, which remember that causes it to go away, is equal to 40. When I solve for x, I end up with 5. So what that means is that she can buy 5 pounds of almonds and 0 pounds of cashews. So it's telling us how much of each value she can buy. After we solve for our x-intercept, we're going to go ahead and solve for the y-intercept. So in this case, we would start with 8 times 0, which again gets eliminated, plus 10y is equal to 40. When I solve this problem, I divide both sides by 10, and I get an answer of y is equal to 4. So in this case, that means 0 pounds of almonds and 4 pounds of cashews. And then the last one, you just have to pick a value. So we've solved for each of our intercepts. Now I'm going to say what happens if she buys 1 pound of almonds. So I plugged in 1 in the place of x, and I'm solving for y. 8 times 1 gives me 8, so I've got 8 plus 10y is equal to 40. Subtracting 8 from both sides, I get 10y is equal to 32. Dividing both sides by 10, I'm going to end up with an answer of y is equal to 3.2. So what that means is if she buys 1 pound of almonds, then she can buy 3.2 pounds of cashews. So you have to go through and find another set that works. You should always find the x and y intercept, and that third one is any possible combination that could allow you to solve the problem. Go ahead and try this one on your own. Solving for the x, you should have gotten 30 pens and 0 pencils. For the second one, you should have gotten 0 pens and 100 pencils. And then for mine, I decided to pick out 6 pens, and that means you can buy 80 pencils. There are a ton of different possibilities, so if you would like me to check your answer, please let me know, and I would be happy to do that for you. If you have questions about this or anything else from the lesson, please let me know when you get to class.